Lesson 34. We continue with the philosophy of the Kleshas, reading from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, chapter 2, Sutra 9, which deals with the last Klesha. Abhinivesha is the strong desire for life, which dominates even the learned or the wise. Abhinivesha is fear. Fear of death, fear. Fear is very pervasive. People do not realize how much all their thoughts, all their decisions are one way or another influenced by fear. Subconsciously, fear is keeping us from doing what is important for us. Many people in life are stuck because out of fear, they choose comfort. They choose security. And whenever they feel the need to take action, it is fear that keeps them from taking action and just staying put in the situation that they are in. With every decision we make, fear is a factor that influences our decision, and very often in an unfavorable way. Fear is paralyzing. Fear is keeping us from following our heart. Fear is keeping us from making decisions that will help to improve our lives in terms of happiness and well-being, in terms of reducing suffering and misery. And it is very human, of course. Fear is a tamas condition. Remember the story about the road not taken that I told you about before. The reason why 95% of all people choose the left path is out of fear. They choose the path that has no obstacles, no challenges, no risks. They choose the path of predictability, security, safety. But the price they pay is very high. It kills the spirit. Happiness and joy are in the spirit. Spirituality is accompanied naturally by joy and happiness. That is why most adults are gray human beings. Gray, dark. There is no spark. There is no vitality. You can't blame them. It's just an observation. I'm not blaming. It's just an observation. It's natural to be in that condition because it's caused by tamas. And human beings naturally have a tendency to be in tamas. The other 5% of people that choose the right path, the path of obstacles, challenges, risk, uncertainty, instability, it's the people that have at least some sparkle of energy in the crown chakra. The crown chakra is the location of courage. people who possess courage have the ability to overrule fear, paralyzing fear. You can't eliminate fear. Fear is important. It warns you of danger. But if you can't rationalize fear, it freezes you. It paralyzes you. If you can rationalize fear, you can carefully weigh the risks that you are taking. And most of the time you come to the conclusion that the fear is not warranted. Or that the reward of taking some risk is much bigger than not even trying at all out of fear. Remember that fear is the fifth and the last of the Kleshas. It is also the stage in which most people are stuck and stay stuck. Throughout all the years since I started practicing yoga, in spite of all the challenges and failures and what have you, I've always said, life is wonderful. That is because I took the right path. Because my spirit is alive, because I allow that energy to flow, and I do not allow fear to destroy my vital energy, and with that, my spirit. And being used to feeling the joy and the happiness that is accompanied by energy in the crown chakra, spiritual life, whenever I descend into darkness, a situation where I get stuck, I simply cannot stay there. I have to take action to change my circumstances, whatever it is that causes me to be stuck. I have to change it because I have to get that nice feeling back again. When you're used to that spirituality, you can't get rid of it anymore. You don't want to live without it anymore. Because it's the difference between life being very gray and dark and life being colorful and with happiness and joy. The crown chakra is the location of courage, and so automatically people that are on the spiritual path possess the quality of courage. We think about courage, about heroes, as people like Superman or the Hulk, people with big muscles and a big mouth maybe. But the opposite is true. People with real courage are usually the people that you expect it least from, that you least expect it from. It's the quiet people. The people that don't stand out in the crowd. The people without big muscles to intimidate other people. Or a big mouth. So fear can be overcome with Shakti energy, and thus we came to the conclusion that to overcome fear, to come out of a condition of paralysis caused by fear, we need to get angry. We use the klesha that comes before fear to get out of the fear. As a parent, you can help your child, if they are stuck, to say something to them that makes them angry. Not something nasty, of course, but something that appeals to their ego. Like the bully sergeant is doing with the recruits in the army training camp. When they are paralyzed by fear, when they need to do an exercise that is really scary. And as a yogi, you can do this with yourself. When you realize, when you're aware of the fact that you are stuck, out of fear, you put your foot down and you say, what the hell is this? I can do better. And you go to work. That fear is a huge problem. You can see by the disasters that happen again and again. Once in a while you see a news item in the newspaper or on TV in the news of a fire in a building, in a nightclub, in a cinema, and many people dying. If you read the whole article, you will find out that most people didn't die because of the fire. People die because other people panic, fear. They lose control out of fear. They can't think rationally anymore, so they start running around like headless chicken, and they trample other people in the process. Most people are killed because they get trampled. The same thing happened in Itaewon. That is the most recent example of a big disaster with many deaths, more than 150 deaths, young people who died because everybody ended up panicking out of fear. It is the people that were strong enough to overcome their fear succeeded in escaping the whole disaster. If people had remained calm, if they had not allowed their fear to overcome them, to overtake them, there wouldn't have been such a big disaster. So clearly fear is a huge factor. The problem is that most people are not aware of it, including us. So it is essential to observe how fear is influencing how you function, how you make your decisions, your thought processes. Fear is always a factor in. If you talk about a disaster, that is of course an extreme form of fear, but there are many little forms of fear that you do not recognize as fear that determine your life. Worry is a form of fear. Depression is related to the past. That's not really related to fear. But worry is about the future, about situations that we are about to face. It's a form of fear. We worry about everything. That's human. And it is okay. It is important that you prepare for situations, that you listen to your concerns. But it is important that you do not allow yourself to be paralyzed by it, because it will keep you from doing everything in life that is important for you. Sutra 10. These, the subtle ones, can be reduced by resolving them backward into their origin. We talked about this in the first class when we talked about all the kleshas that exist, and we had this story about the bully sergeant and how the kleshas basically evolve. Starting with ignorance, we become then controlled by ego. We also looked at it from the perspective of relationships. Because in relationships you go down the same path. Out of ignorance, you fall in love, and in the beginning, when you fall in love, love is wonderful. You're on a pink cloud, and you feel happy, and you look at yourself in the mirror and you're smiling, and people can feel that you are in love. But very soon, when you become attached to each other, ego kicks in, And the misery starts in the relationships. Something that started in the crown chakra quickly descends into Muladhara chakra, if you look at it from our perspective. Falling in love opens your heart, so the crown chakra is wide open. But because of ego, attachment, then anger and fear, all that was wonderful becomes hell, becomes misery. If you've been in relationship or relationships, you recognize this because it happens again and again. Until you take control, until you stop allowing your ego to become suspicious of your partner. You want to check their email and their phone messages, text messages, cacao. You want to impose your conditions. I want you to do this and I don't want you to do that. This is all out of fear. So, the Sutra 10 tells us exactly the process that we discussed when we talked about the bully sergeant, where he helps you to get out of your paralysis of fear by making you angry. But anger in itself is also not good. So once the objective has been obtained, once you have succeeded in ending the paralysis in the person by reversing fear by using anger or hatred to get out of the fear, the next step is, of course, because hatred in itself is also not a good sentiment, is to help the person get out of the anger or the hatred with attachment. You give the person appreciation for their courage, that they were able to overcome fear. Then you have attachment, of course, which in itself you don't want. In case of the bully sergeant or a teacher, you don't want your recruits or your students to depend on you. They have to become independent. So then you have to stimulate their ego. You have to give them a feeling that they can do things on their own, that they don't need you anymore. You're good enough, you're strong enough. You give them a diploma, you give them a medal, you give them some kind of symbol of their success, appealing to ego. And then they fly out. And so you have reversed the kleshas from fear using anger, then from anger using attachment so that people don't stay stuck in their hatred for the bully sergeant or the teacher. Then you use ego to help them detach from you so they can be functioning as an independent entity with newly found qualities and insights in the training camp, in the army training camp. They build warriors like that, people that can fight battles and win battles. And in school, they create people that can become economically independent. And in yoga, we create people that can transform and develop consciousness and think on their own, develop wisdom and insight on their own. The last step is that you have reversed the condition of ignorance that led to the last station of fear. Ignorance becomes knowledge and wisdom. Now, this sounds very simple, problem solved, but it doesn't work like that. Because you solve one problem, but the tendency to go down that path and end up in fear will occur again. And in the beginning, it will take some months. Sometimes it will take some years before you realize that you got stuck again. And then you just go on that path to reverse it the process to reverse it. And you have developed a new insight in life and in yourself. And what you notice with time passing is that you become more and more skillful at it. Instead of staying stuck for several years, next time it's only a couple of months. And you go through the process a couple of times more, and you notice that within several weeks already you notice that you have done it again. And then it takes only a couple of days. And you become more and more skillful at realizing, because it is out of ignorance that we don't even know what is happening, about realizing that you have gotten stuck again. It will even come to the point that you're not going there anymore and have to reverse it anymore. Fear, I have dealt with certain fears in life also by challenging myself, by playing. I made a side note here that I made a side note here that says overcoming shyness. I was a very, very shy person when I was a teenager in my early 20s. And I remember once reading something. I read a lot of books about self-help, about psychology, about... as a yoga practitioner, you just have many questions, and I solved that by reading books, giving insight. And I read somewhere that a Japanese approach to shyness is to expose yourself deliberately to situations where you feel shy. And as an example, they gave this of a person who was very shy and decided to enroll in a theater class, so that you're with other people and you have to start acting, something that shy people find very difficult. What I did to overcome my shyness is I started working in a shop, a health food shop, organic food shop. I worked there for 5 years, part-time, like three days a week or so. And while doing that kind of, because I was really, I was practicing yoga for several years already, I was very conscious of health, of food. I was very passionate about organic food stuff. And when I'm passionate about something, there is no fear. There is no shyness. People would ask me, are you the boss? Are you the owner of this shop? Because my demeanor was so confident, there was no shyness at all. Of course, that didn't take away my shyness, because in other situations there was still shyness. But I'm sitting in front of 30 people teaching yoga, no problem at all. And so time and time again, I've done things that were really scary, and in the end it has helped me to solve the problem completely. So play with your fear. There are things in life, like meeting people. Now, you don't have to meet everybody, but there are people maybe that you feel really attracted to, you feel you really like. But your shyness does not allow you to communicate with those people, to approach those people. And it makes you miserable, because you feel attracted. Then you have to roll up your sleeve and do something bold to create a situation where you are with that person. It is very scary, but it is beautiful at the same time. Because you're pursuing something that you really want, but that you feel that you can't do. And when you then go to work to make it happen, it just gives such an enormous sense of encouragement and accomplishment. It gives you a sense of control, that you are able to do things that you thought you were not able or capable of doing. So play. Don't take unnecessary risk. Don't be foolish. That is also yoga. But also do not allow yourself to be stuck in fear, paralyzed by fear, and spending the rest of your life being miserable and not accomplishing anything at all in life. So, Sutra 10 tells us that the subtle ones, the kleshas that are not too severe, can be reduced with this process by reversing them from fear to hatred to attachment to ego, and then turning ignorance into wisdom. The next sutra, Sutra 11, tells us that their active modifications are to be suppressed by meditation. Now this part I never read from the text, but this part I want to read from the text because I wrote this in a moment of deep insight and inspiration. I wrote this text. It's a description of my own struggle and my realizations that I had throughout the years. For many years I've been walking around with my head full of questions and doubts. My heart knew what to do and where to go, but the head always threw a spanner in the works. Once that started, I could not see a solution and would feel really stuck. That was the moment I understood the value of meditation. Because only when I would sit down and meditate, or practice asana very quietly and in a meditative way, quietness would come over me and peace would come into my heart. As a result of the head becoming quiet, I would fully connect with the heart and know that everything was all right. This gave such a wonderful sense of reassurance. I would never have succeeded in overcoming the troubles of my life without this gift. It also deeply convinced me that there is no coincidence in life and that everything happens when the time is right, when you are ready for it. It also taught me that all the misery was there for a purpose. Not to wail in misery, but to learn a lesson and move on. That deep understanding in its turn teaches you patience and diligence. It's almost like a religion or becoming religious, but straight from the heart. Without the silence of meditation, I would never have had the insight and wisdom necessary to do what I had to do. And in fact, it is what allowed me to come to Korea to become a yoga teacher, to give up my Dutch nationality, everything that I've done in the past 40 years. What I found out to be the result of meditation is that there's always a solution, but it also made me understand that normal people are not able to see a solution because they are in the midst of all those disturbances that muddle their view, rendering them incapable of seeing the essence of things. Their mental pollution does not allow inspiration and insight to come to them. The value of meditation is much more practical than people can imagine. It is not about being an interesting person involved in hip or fashionable pseudo-spirituality or new age stuff. A meditation exists to solve practical problems. It's absolutely necessary for everyone to meditate, and it would be ideal if every school had meditation in the program. What this sutra is about, we talked about it in the previous session, the first session today, is that every person has their own karma, every person has their own conditioning based on your unique experiences since you were born, your traumatic experiences, memories, etc. And that conditioning will determine how you react in a certain situation. And the way you react is always in your own unique way and different from how other people react, simply because they are conditioned in different ways, with different memories and experiences. So this Sutra, Sutra 11, tells us their active modifications are to be suppressed by meditation, means that the way that you are conditioned, you can only overcome the determined way that you will react in situations caused by your conditioning by meditation. And the reason why this is important is because this is the science of misery. The philosophy of the Kleshas is the science of misery, or, more importantly, how to avoid misery. Everybody wants to live life with less misery, but we feel helpless because we can't help ourselves. We can't change the way that we act and react in certain situations because we are conditioned that way. And every time it happens, we feel helpless and frustrated. Oh my goodness, it happened again. How can I be so stupid? When you meditate, you develop a whole new vision. Because in your meditation, you are contemplative. And you see yourself in a very different way compared to when you're not in a meditative state. So you start to see the essence of your conditioning. You start to see the essence of your traumas, of your memories. And when you see that, when you realize that, it gives you the power to change it, to control it. And that is why meditation is so incredibly valuable. For many people, meditation is a luxury. It's a fashion, it's a trend, because everybody else is doing it. It's not a luxury. I think I've said it before a couple of times. Spirituality is not a luxury. Meditation is not a luxury. It has incredibly valuable implications in the way that we function. Sutra 12. So why do we need to get rid of the Kleshas? I basically answered that question already with the explanation I just gave you. But the sutra says, Sutra 12, the reservoir of karmas, which are rooted in Kleshas, brings all kinds of experiences in the present and future lives. Every person has their own unique karma, and according to Buddhist philosophy, we need at least 1 million reincarnations, 1 million lives to live through to get rid of our karma. Think of it. It's a philosophy, of course, but it means that for 1 million lives we have to suffer. We have to live in misery because we are ignorant. Because we are ignorant, we have to go through so many lives of suffering before we finally can go to heaven. So if we can solve the ignorance, we don't have to continue living all these reincarnations with all that suffering and misery that people go through and that we ourselves went through before we started on the path of yoga. The life that you live is not determined. People think that life is determined by luck. If you're lucky, you are born in a rich family. If you're not so lucky, then you're born in a poor family. It doesn't work like that. According to the law of karma, you will end up where you deserve to be. And that depends on the level of evolution that you have gone through. So, there in New Age circles, in spiritual circles, there is mention of old souls and young souls. Old souls are usually people that are very wise, insightful, and if you're an old soul, you will connect with people who are also an old soul. You're on the same wavelength. You can assume that old souls are people that have burned most of their karma or a lot of their karma already. Either by living hundreds of thousands of lives of misery that finally have led to some insight, or because in previous lives they have been on a spiritual path. And so in this life they are born already with that advantage, that they have already left a lot of their karma behind because they did all the work in previous lives, being on the spiritual path. So Sutra 12 is basically a reflection of the tragedy that we are facing because people are lacking, out of ignorance, people are lacking the insight in the way that they function and why they function like that. As a result of which they are suffering. And what is even more tragic is that people think that suffering is part of life. But that's not true. Once you realize what causes the suffering, and that is what we are studying here, you can avoid it. Then next week we will come across a sutra where Patanjali makes that very clear, where he says that the misery that has not come yet can and must be avoided. So we will come to that very soon. Questions? All right, let's have a short break.